the lighter side of the dark side. It's your weekly freak show here on Renegade Radio, and also we're on every podcast catcher and iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, all over the world, and on YouTube. It's the Dark Mark Show. I'm Dark Mark, the goth comedian, and here as always, except for a couple weeks ago, my co-host, everybody's favorite horror writer, Nicole Six.
Hello. How's everyone doing?
Everyone's good. Should I add gossip columnist to your resume as well?
I'm not a gossip columnist. I'm a party blogger. I have purposely changed the names of certain people so that it doesn't so people feel comfortable. I told Charlie the same thing. I don't want to be like a tabloid writer. I just write about the party, not the gossip and drama.
Yes, people don't know what we're talking about. On Renegade Radio, Nicole is going to be blogging about all the Hollywood parties that she goes to, most of which I'm not invited to. But the superstar that you told me about in text in private that we both met, was that one that you had under an assumed name?
Oh, no, I'm going to talk about Dave Navarro easily.
Okay.
That was his show. That's different. So that's what I'm trying to say. It's not a gossip column. That's a terrible way to put it. It's not about gossip.
Is it a gossip column? It sounds like a gossip column.
No, it's living vicariously through Nicole and her Hollywood friends. Piping up there is one of our guests and the director of the new documentary that's coming out. We're starting to roll test screenings. Should be coming out before 2022 unless somebody snaps it up and wants to put it on right away. That's Angelus Bailey.
Oh, hi. I was just chiming in for a second. That was it. I didn't need that full intro. No. I'm just saying hi. I want to hear more about the gig that you have. I think that's more. I mean,
we're going to talk about your movies as well, because especially the latest one, Pundemic, and also the other movies. And our other guest, and I'm not sure, Angela, since you're the director and you're in charge, what is his official credit on Pundemic?
He's been a producer, honestly, since the start. He kind of came with the, he said, hey, you should come and film these underground shows. And I agreed. I was like, yeah, let's just do a fun little thing for YouTube and kind of get it started. And then just kind of grew from there. And yeah, James has been kind of a gateway drug to the comedy scene to really, be able to get in there and meet a lot of great people and do a lot of great interviews here in LA, and just making it happen in general.
It's a convoluted way of introducing our other guest, who is a producer and came up with the concept, I believe, of Pundemic, and somebody I've known from the comedy scene for a long time. I know that people try to pit us against each other, but we work well together. The man who is the master of the satanic pun, James Demon.
Yes. Good morning. Yes.
Good morning. I have to correct you. By the way, this is James Demon's idea to have us all here in the morning. So.
Oh my goodness! I just woke up. You can see there's a sweaty glaze on my forehead. That is that was from my slumber here in the valley, where it reaches temperatures of 133 degrees. Yes.
The valley sucks. I don't want to live there again. It was awful.
Well, Nicole, it would make sense that the demon lives in the valley.
It's so hot. It is so hot out here. My car battery exploded the other day because it was so hot.
Wow, scary.
You know what you need? You need to do what I'm going to do right now and grab an ice cold Ray's energy drink. This is one of our sponsors. Nice. I love energy drinks. I've tried them all. This is the best one. Angelus has given these. He knows Ray's.
This is it. What we're doing, right? We're
on some product placement.
This is the best. Yes. Trust me, I've tried them all.
Get that case rolling over. I'm in.
I've tried all the energy drinks. I tried Steven Seagal's energy drink. I tried one that was shaped like a bomb. They had one with Horty goat weed in it. I tried them all. This is the best. You can't get this at supermarkets. You can't get this in 7-Eleven. You can get this at gyms and GNCs, but why pay full price? If you go to the description in YouTube or on any of our podcast catchers, you'll get a code for 15% off a case of Ray's. The best thing about this, 0 calories, 0 carbs, 0 crash, and all sorts of beautiful flavors, delicious flavors. This is strawberry colada. and I am hot. I'm not valley hot, but I am hot. It's delicious. One more sponsor before we get started, since we're chilling, without shame. Go to Audible. We are sponsored by Audible. Everybody loves audiobooks, especially comedians on the road. You go to audibletrial.com/DMS. Audibletrial.com/DMS. You get a free book and a free trial to Audible. You can try all the Audible originals. I actually typed in demon in Audible to see if they had anything, and they have everything. They have demons, what the Bible says about the powers of darkness. They have a book by Carl Sagan, which is The Demon Haunted World, Science is a Candle in the Dark. And my favorite, they have an erotic book, Taming Demons for Beginners. But whatever you want, you don't have to get a demon book. You can get whatever book you want. They've got everything at Audible, and it's free. Just go to audibletrial.com/DMS. Let me give you something free. Get a free audiobook. And
Nice.
we've got something you guys might be interested in, but we're going to talk about that a little later. Anyway, I don't know who wants to start, but James, Angelus, when did you guys meet?
I think 2015, when there was another sketch project we were working on. It was called Clown Stomper. There was a YouTube series I was a part of, and we made a few episodes, and Angelus helped out with that. We might have met earlier than that.
Yeah,
at a party.
We ran in the same circles between thinking about like Sam J and kind of that whole crew. Like I would say you've been in the comedy scene, kind of working on comedy, and I've just been peripheral for the last decade or so. So I'm like, I've been an artist basically on the side, just kind of watching it. But you and I, I'd say you and I have been friends probably at least 5 years, if not longer. Probably like more like 7 to 8, because we did several sketches together with Sam J. And then Clown Stomper. Was that 2015 for Clown Stomper?
Either that or 2016, around that area.
Clown Stomper, what I think it is, you guys are stomping clowns.
It was a Channel 101 with an old buddy of ours that his ex-girlfriend came up with a concept, and everybody kind of just ran with it, and it was really fun. Just it was like a guy that goes vigilante after killer clowns, essentially. So easy, simple concept, super fun, and they went a couple of rounds with Channel 101. I think it was fun overall. It was a pretty fun experience. I mean,
is the clown doing the stomping? Is the clown doing the stomping, or is the clown being stomped?
They were getting stomped. They were essentially getting stomped. Yeah, so it was, but they did their, they held their own, I think, in general. I think there were some clowns over there that could really keep it going, but I think, in general, I think they were
Were there squeaky air horn noises when they were stomped, or is there
everything? It was, or even like mimes too, so they'd be really quiet.
Well, I could see being stomping mimes, but clowns, come on, what's the matter with you guys?
Listen, I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but if you're around a clown and it's a mime, you don't want to make a lot of noise, because they're, you want to sneak up on them. I think
that's probably about the time I met James. Was about 2014, 2015. I had heard about him, he had heard about me, and then we just kind of ran into each other at a show, and it was like, if I recall correctly, and I might be mistaken, this may not have been the first time we met, but the first time I remember just talking to you after a show was some really bad bar show, and I don't think either one of us did particularly good, but we both recognized what we were doing and thought the other one was funny. I don't know if you remember that, James, but
I do not remember that. That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it was an open mic, and we're going to get into that, because
where was it?
It might have been Liquid Zoo or something. I'm not sure, but it was.
Oh, I like that.
I had not transformed into the demon yet back then.
Maybe I met you pre-demon then. Maybe I met you pre-demon, because I know when you started with the demon, people started telling me about it. Angelus, tell me about him pre-demon, because I don't even remember this.
Oh man, I'm not even allowed to. I've had to sign a disclosure form prior to even starting this film, where he's like, if I don't have my eyes in and then we're doing promo, I don't want to even be on camera. So like literally I can't even get into it. I'd rather just get into the doc and talk about, having to get like a bunch of 120 comics together and interviewing them all for about 5 minutes a pop, and just
Oh no, we're gonna get to the movie.
yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The pre-demon me is a big secret. Yes.
I'm like,
it'll
you get into pre-demon. I'm like, I'm gonna, I'll get into pre-me. You want to hear about pre-me? I'll go pre-me all day. But give us.
Well, let me, Nicole, just so you and our audience who are unfamiliar, I just want to have James give you maybe one pun out of his act so you can see exactly what we're dealing with as far as the comedy is concerned.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you my newest one.
Okay.
So, what's the worst thing about an Italian graveyard?
What?
All the gabagools.
Oh.
I'm waiting for the post punchline spell.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's James after the punchline, whether it sells or not. It's
Yes.
Gabagool.
Yeah.
And I've seen the since I guess I was there at the beginning of the demon. I've seen the act progress and become very, very funny. And once again you were talking last night because we had the open mic before the show, how people are like people are like, oh, are you pissed off that there's another goth comic or another weird comic? And you're not, and I'm not. There's plenty out there, and there's a room for plenty more. Your act is based on puns. My act is based on my life. The guy who was on America's Got Talent, the goth comic, he's got a different act. It's more Mitch Hedberg. Everybody's got a different thing. As long as it's about your life and your experience, and of course your experience is as Satan, it's fair game. I would think, right, James?
Yes, and then like another thing about the Gothic people, we tend to just like each other because we relate. We have a natural disdain for life itself rather than each other.
That's sweet. I like that.
If everybody wore all black and danced by themselves to Susan the Banshees, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, and there's also Mia Mars, another Gothic.
Mia Mars, Virginia Jones. There's Bethany Black in England. There's a few.
Yeah.
So it's not just us. And Mia's been on the show many a time. We love Mia. We had Mia on with Stanton LaVey last year. It was and she was more satanic than he was. So it was a great show.
Stanton LaVey.
Stanton LaVey.
That's excellent.
Yeah, he's a regular.
Did you get to interview Stanton LaVey as well?
Well, I see your smile. Maybe we'll have him on with you because you seem so fascinated.
I'm like, I'll take a pun any day of the week. So I'm like, there's a great electronic artist named Bit Midler.
Yeah.
It's like instead of Bette Midler, and he's like taking his bits and he's meddling with them. Like, I think that's pretty. Yeah, Stanton LaVey works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then tell Stanton hi. So
we'll do.
Anyway. So James, since you're around evil all the time, what when that pandemic started to hit, before you even thought about doing a movie, what was your reaction? You were just really starting to find your groove in the comedy scene, and
I would say for the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, nothing was happening. The world was truly shut down.
Right.
I mean, you saw on the news the dolphins were coming back into the canals and all this good stuff, and nature was starting to return to normal for a small bit. And then within 2 weeks, someone had posted on Instagram about a speakeasy style comedy gathering. It really wasn't even an open mic. Comedians just decided that we were going to get together and start performing for each other. Because at an open mic, there's always a chance for real audience. But at the beginning of these gatherings, there wasn't real audience. It was comedians gathering. And then some comedians from San Diego decided to start bringing back the open mic aspect, and they turned it into a drive-in open mic where people could sit in their cars and listen on their radio, and they drove up to LA. And then they started the parking lot mic, which was at Fry's Electronics in Burbank.
Right.
And that actually had started to bring back non-comics to watch, because people who weren't comfortable being around other people could just sit in their cars and listen to the comedy while watching it. And then comedians started throwing rooftop mics, and then the El Cid opened up kind of speakeasy style on their patio, and
Right.
they were doing things social distanced, and technically it was still outside because it was on their patio. And they started having book shows, and they started having combined with open mics, and that kind of caught on, and it kind of snowballed into this big scene, which became just an underground current of comedy. And it was very exciting, and it was very fun, and I could feel that this was comedy history. And I wanted to film it, but I'm not a filmmaker. And Angelus, who was paying attention to my Instagram stories, saw me posting all these pictures and videos in my stories of these rooftop shows and parking lots, and he was interested, and he messaged me and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I said, "There's a whole underground scene going on. Somebody needs to film this. This would be a great documentary." And right away, no hesitation, he said, "I'm on it." And then like the next day, he was with me and we were filming. And then we drove down to San Diego. American Comedy Co. was doing it. They reopened. They opened up on their sidewalk, and they were doing it outside. And we went down to San Diego and got all that whole scene down there. And then Angelus ended up driving up to San Francisco. And then he drove up to Eureka, and he got Savage Henry. They threw a festival, and there was a little window when things opened back up for like a month. And it was at Savage Henry, and Angelus was able to get that festival and get the owner, the manager of Savage Henry. So we ended up capturing this entire underground scene I thought was only happening in Los Angeles, but was happening across all of California. And what's kind of fascinating, Jill D'Souza, this had spread, this like the underground scene or word of it had spread. Jill D'Souza was from Michigan and drove out or moved out to Los Angeles just because the comedy scene was still happening in Los Angeles. Wow. So people, there were a few people, I don't know everyone by name, but there were a few people who moved to Los Angeles during the pandemic because they had heard comedy was happening out here. And some of them have moved away, but we actually attracted people to move here because of the comedy scene. So it was a very cool happening scene when it was happening.
So it wasn't a nationwide thing. It was basically a California thing.
I haven't heard of any other underground scenes that were happening in comedy other than in California. If there were, I'd be interested in seeing footage of it if someone else made a documentary. Yes, but I haven't heard of any of it. It was just California. Yes.
Right. Well, I hate to wake up Angelus, but I know that since he is, oh, there you go. And I know that when James says you're a filmmaker that seems to be obsessed with death, which obviously comedy has a lot of with, because you were an award winner for the Tamerlane Death Cycle 001. What is that?
It's a start of an art series of films, and I've done the second one's basically set now. I haven't finished it yet or sent it off the festival or done anything, but yeah, it's it was an art film I made in 2016. It's got Richard Bain in it, who eventually committed suicide. So it's kind of a wild piece. He's a comedian here in the comedy scene of Los Angeles. He was the main character, and then involved a bunch of other local comics or kind of actors and such. Lauren Brenner's in it. Terrence Newman. I got an ex-girlfriend in it. I don't know. So but it was fun. It's a one-shot piece that we filmed a follow through, and we filmed it through 3 times, and we ran it all 3 times. It was maybe about 15 minutes long, 14 minutes long, something like that. Just pure fantasy or whatever. And we shopped it around to all the majors or whatever. It's micro budget, so we we caught IFS Film Festival here in Los Angeles for Best Experimental 2017, and it was great. It was yeah, it was awesome. It's like the most, you know, fringy festival. It's like Harmony Korine, Lars von Trier. They've all done their premieres, you know, at this festival. They did.
But that's got to be.
They've done some. It's all the weirdos. They've done all the weirdos here. They all break at this film festival essentially. So they caught me Best Experimental back in 2017, and it was really fun. But you know, I'm still a commercial artist, so I have to still pay bills and still, you know, and still work and still do stuff. So ultimately, yeah, I think taking on this
Never death cycle. Now,
yeah,
filming a 50-minute uninterrupted shot, you have to be on pins and needles the whole time that somebody doesn't screw something up. I mean, that's such a tightrope.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's got all the players involved in it and stuff, and you just do a bunch of run throughs. I think we did probably 3 weeks of run throughs, and yeah, it's.
There's that story about Martin Scorsese when he did Goodfellas, and the shot was perfect. Then he got to Henny Youngman, and Henny Youngman fucked up his joke that he said a billion times and totally screwed up the shot. So you just got to be like, that's got to be a nightmare doing 50 minutes of that. That was a 10-minute shot.
No, just 15, not 50.
Oh, 15. Okay, still,
yeah. It's
still
super intense, and you have to get everything kind of correct. And we've got like 3 different segments and stuff, and there's all these different. We probably had 15 characters and 3 different segments, and it's like an art world. He kind of gets butt naked, and he gets rolled around in a bunch of paper and stuff by these paper creatures, and then like adorned with all these like.
I really want to see it now.
Stuff or whatever, and kind of gets taken to this table of like awards and snacks and drink and people laughing and shit. And then he kind of just goes through his whole life cycle. So he goes through from like adult to like, I think we give him like crutches or something, and then like a walker, and then we put him in a wheelchair, and then we wheel him like over to this thing, and we take all of his material shit away, and then we put him on a deathbed, and we like trudged him around the yard, you know, like all dressed up in this crazy shit. And it's wild. It's actually really, this is really a wild epiphanic thought, but at the time of it, he did himself in last year during COVID. And to think about it in that respect, the end of the film is literally, it's him, you know, it's the death cycle, it's him dying, and it's with him with a mask on, like the mask, you know.
Right.
And he's got, it's kind of adorned with leaves and stuff or whatever, but it's really weird. It's really telling. It's got some future fortune telling to it that was kind of I didn't notice it until I watched it probably more recently, where I was like, oh God, this ends with him like wearing a mask to his death, you know.
So you are the pandemic, yes, you are the pandemic harbinger in some ways.
I think I just documented it, honestly. There's something to
Now, you've
it.
never done a documentary before, have you?
Just little ones. So I've done a bunch of stuff for Library Foundation and LA Public Library, and I've done stuff for Red Bull. I've done a bunch of stuff for Kia.
Hey! Don't say Red Bull.
Oh, right.
Anyway,
well, they don't pay my bills anymore, so
yeah, Raise energy drink. Anyway,
yeah.
so but anyway, I was going to say,
on some of that Raise dollars. I'm in. They want to sign me up on a product shot. I'm like, that's it. I'll crush something for you guys all day long. But you know, it's nice. It was nice to be able to make art, pure art, for art's sake, and not really.
Now, did you guys have any qualms about a health risk going into these things? Because I wore a mask, and I still wear it. And honestly, yeah. I got to be honest. I wish they still wiped off the microphone like they used to do.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for COVID, but for herpes and scabies and all the other stuff that other comics have. I mean,
dirty comic mouths.
Yeah, just like
you really have to get on that
just forget
mic.
now. But did you have any health concerns or no?
No, your mouth can kill AIDS, so no. You can.
What do you know about my mouth?
I'm telling you, everybody's mouth. You can put AIDS right in your mouth, and it'll kill it. You've got enough quality bacteria between that and your gut that you're not going to catch it in your mouth. So I'm not worried about a mic. I think we were concerned about our safety when it came to doing indoor mics. That would
Right.
be about, that's probably about as strong as anything outdoors. It was like, who cares? Where everybody's wearing masks, everybody's kind of doing their distance. But if it was an indoor mess, there were a couple of indoor ones that were kind of sketchy. What was the one on Melrose?
I can't.
Johnny,
Oh yeah. Vicky's
yes, priest Johnny, Reverend Johnny did this thing called over at Vicky's, and it was literally a hot box of like smoking cigarettes and weed in there. And I like came in before they had the show, and I was like, "Oh, this is just like a room." I'm like, "All right, let's get this interview really quick so I can get out of here." Because once you hot box it with like 30 comics, just like smoking cigs and I'm like, I'm not trying to do this anyways. In a pre-COVID, so during COVID, it was even kind of the same. And I think there were a couple other venues where it was an indoor situation where I was like, you know what, this isn't what I want to also. This is also isn't what I want to capture.
Right.
Like
Now,
I said, venue is kind of, I won't be like it's kind of corny, but I like the Wild West rebel aspect of doing these like parking lot mics and you guys being like we met at El Cid, and El Cid was like not supposed to be doing shows, and and you guys were all doing the Fries mic, and the Fries mic was just a random throw together. And I think that was kind of the magic of it. That was more the spirit of all of it. That's kind of what I think that's what we wanted to capture. So
yeah, I seem to do a lot of shows that close the next week that they found out about. But James, now, was there a particular documentary, comedy or otherwise, that you had patterned this after, or just?
No,
Because I know that after the Aristocrats, there's been a flood of comedy documentaries.
No, what I wanted to do was just show up and film. That's all. What in my mind, what I was imagining was punk rock documentaries that I had watched. Like I like The Decline of Western Civilization. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I watch a lot of little documentaries on YouTube, little snippets and stuff, and I was really interested in capturing the environment and the feel of the environment and what everybody's view of everything was at that time, to really get the feel of a point of view that was happening and the consciousness that was shared amongst everybody at that time. That's what I really wanted to capture. I wasn't trying to make some type of movie that I had already seen. I knew I was in something that had a lot of buzz and was making history, and I knew that it should have been captured. And I just wanted to capture that feeling, and I wanted to capture a historical moment. That's what I really wanted to do.
Right, but basically it's fuck death, let's laugh.
Pretty much every comedian mentality that was performing is, let's laugh at what we're supposed to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. We gathered and just made each other and anyone else who wanted to show up laugh. And I think a lot of the animosity that was shared between comedians had disappeared. Community had really grown between everybody. You didn't see any rivalry or cattiness between comics at all during this pandemic. It was beautiful. It was a real coming together of community in a time when we were being told to stay locked up inside and be afraid. We chose to come out and be a community with each other, and it was a lot of fun. And it was almost, for a point, it was more fun than comedy pre-COVID. It just became a very loving environment.
What about comedy post-COVID?
Post-COVID,
is the cattiness back?
It's back.
Well,
everything's back.
Everything's back.
It's back.
I'm gonna say it never left.
And the comedians that first came out, I would say like a few months ago, when things opened back up and comedians started to come back, these comedians were coming back with this mentality and posting like, "Oh, I'm breaking the rules." And it's like, okay, we have a documentary about everyone that really was being punk rock, and you're not being punk rock now. You've been given permission to come out. So no, we were out doing it when we technically weren't supposed to, and
I
we
like that.
captured
I
that.
like
You
that.
guys aren't.
And you weren't doing it
guys
just to be edgy. You were doing it because you had to. Like it was in your
Yes,
soul to get out.
Yes, we
Yeah.
wanted to get out. We wanted to perform,
They
and
needed to- well, you
it was
needed
so
to.
much.
You needed to.
Yeah, and it was so much that in the beginning there weren't any audience. It was just us. We're just performing for each other.
It was like
So
40
it was like-
comics just roaming the city of LA, like sharing addresses where you guys could perform or something. It was wild. It turned into a small town really quick, and like all the fluff was gone. Everything else got burned off completely. Like it was just your like core unit of like literally like 40 comics, maybe 50 comics that were actually physically going out to whatever mic existed and hitting them. Like it was great. It was really fun. Like it was a wild time.
And speaking of wild, before I want to get into the how you chose the comics, which I think you just interviewed everybody because you have like over 120 comics. But Nicole, tell us because Angelus was talking about being in a smoke-filled environment. Tell us about Renegade CBD and Renegade Kush.
Well,
Gotta pay your
part of
bills
what
again.
I do with my blog is I talk a bit about bringing Renegade Kush to parties and letting people try it out, and everybody has always agreed that it's fantastic. I have a whole box of edibles coming, and we'll see how that goes. I'll probably start taking one or two before the show. He also makes CBD cigarettes. So if you actually like to smoke regular cigarettes, they're CBD infused and they're really good. Like I don't smoke cigarettes, but I tried them out, and the CBD levels are very nice.
So the website's coming up. It's not up yet, but it's imminent. RenegadeCBD.com. Try out their CBD. Try out their Kush. I'm going to start taking it out to comedy shows, and I'll bet I'll make a fortune. But from what I understand, and Nicole's the expert. I don't smoke marijuana myself. I don't because I'm overweight and I'm lazy anyway. But Nicole can vouch for it. So
I don't know if I'm the expert, but I do know my weed.
yes, so it's good stuff. Anyway, James, how did you choose the comics, or you just interviewed everybody?
We just showed up and we got as many as we could. There were quite a few that we didn't end up getting that I wish we could have got, but sometimes either a comic wasn't there, or we were just cut for battery power or time, or we just weren't able to get an interview with somebody, or they would leave before we could get to them. So there were a grip of comics that I would have wanted to get that we didn't get, but pretty much we would show up and just start interviewing right away. We just started asking them questions, and I'd see someone, we'd run over and get them an interview. There were some comics that said no. Some people
Really?
said no, that they didn't want to be interviewed. And so, yeah, it was very guerrilla. It was just
Had
show
to have
up.
been sort of backlash to it. Like I remember me and Mark used to get like mean comments if we didn't even just wear our masks, just like when we were out together,
Well, we didn't, because I'm not on Facebook, and we didn't really promote this on Facebook, and that all the animosity that I was hearing about was coming through Facebook, and I refused
those comments were definitely on Facebook.
Yeah, and so I'm refusing. I refuse to have a Facebook profile. I don't go on Facebook. I don't like Facebook, because that's all it is. It's just people shitting on each other and fighting, and it's we were just being artists, and
You're
so
either too evil or too angelic for Facebook. I'm not sure which.
I know.
well,
I
think
can't you just be on there and just get along and just shoot your
So
family?
it's
a
you and my
message
father,
once
the
in a
only two
while?
people I know that are not on there.
I know.
Yeah. Yes, I loathe Facebook. It is it's just it's
Well, you being the demon, you know where the seed of this satanic social media came from. So
yes, it's very
yeah.
well, you see, as a demon, we like to torture the wicked. We don't like
To torture everybody.
necessarily to harm the enlightened or the pure of heart. They are fine. We are truly disgusted with the wicked, and we torture them. And you find all of the wicked on Facebook. I could go after them and torture them, but really Facebook is just a cesspool for just it's no.
What?
It's basically hell on earth is what Facebook
It is, and well, I'm I'm a soul that has escaped hell, so
I
I do
love
not want to go
Facebook.
back.
Facebook's like
Angelus
one,
loves Facebook.
I love it. It's like one big pop-up ad. Who cares? It's like it's
All
just
right.
it's like a big pop-up ad for kind of like for family and friends and such. I'm like, I get it. It comes with a lot of junk or whatever, but also it's kind of like getting foreign phone calls. You know, if you got a number that's calling you and you're not sure what that phone number is, if you pay your bills, you'll pick up the phone. No?
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
they can leave me a message.
I mean, I
Like,
remember
I
MySpace
do
was
not
fun.
pick up. Yeah, Facebook feels the same way. It just feels like a, you know, like a, it's there's so much junk on there, but you know, if you're keeping your nose clean and you're not really trying to get into too much, you know, muss or fuss or whatever, or like razzle dazzle everybody up or or whatever. I think it's fine for keeping track of like all your friends and like, hey, what's going on, or like, I don't know. I got a bunch of friends back in the Midwest where like it's the only way I even know who had a baby or
Right.
who's, you know, hey, I want to get together with you guys if I see you guys back in Milwaukee or Midwest or Chicago or whatever. Like, otherwise, I can't remember who Hoodly Coodly at Instagram is. Like, I need
Right.
people's names and such.
Well,
I'm
I'm on all social media. Just started TikTok, but I haven't twerked yet, but it's coming. But I wouldn't be on any of it
nice.
if I wasn't trying to get a comedy career going. My frustration with Facebook
Started
is,
reverse TikTok or
Yeah.
reverse OnlyFans where people pay you not to twerk.
I
that's
could probably
classic.
do that.
That wouldn't be bad. That wouldn't be bad at all. Like a Patreon, but it's like a Matreon, right? It's all like
Yes.
moms.
I will take off my clothes
No
unless you pay
twerking.
me money.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's a good hustle.
I think everybody except for Nicole's got a new hustle. But so James, let's get into the editing process, because, well, let me just say, as far as these comedians that you interviewed, I know most of them, but none of them are super famous.
Nope.
You're not going to find Bill Burr. You're not going to find Dave Chappelle. This
Nope.
is a different level of comedian, and even there's sub levels. But there were, I mean, they all had interesting insights to say about the pandemic. How did the editing process go? Because I'm assuming because you have the documentary, you have certain points that you go through the documentary that are listed on screen. I'm assuming that you asked everybody similar questions.
This is it. Yeah. I mean, I just literally let the OCD click in and got them into sections essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first pass of just logged footage was probably about 3.5, 4 hours of like where I was like, this footage is all great, like amazing footage. And then I had to whittle it down to like an hour. So it was basically just.
What was can you tell me one or two of the last cuts that you really wanted to have in it, but you had to cut it?
Oh, I would even say from the trailer, Fanto says like he's got a funny line where he's like, and it's really crass and it's obviously sarcastic. It's obviously in comedy, but it's in really fucking poor taste. Sorry, it's in really poor taste. So it's like, he says something like, I don't care if your grandparents die. I got to tell my titty joke before the aliens come. Right. And it's like, it's funny, but it's also like, Jesus, if you had your grandparents pass away from COVID or some kind of illness, or like even recently and it's fresh, or you just like really miss your grandparents, or they're not dead and you just love them a lot. Like, it was like, I was like, nah, I'm going to keep this in. And I had, one of the comedians be like, I don't really want to do this documentary if you're going to keep that in the trailer. And I was like, well, let me ask around. And most of the comedies were like, yeah, it's okay. It's funny. He's being sarcastic. So I kept it in. And then I had my original executive producer at the time was like, oh, you know what? That's a little bit inappropriate. Maybe we should probably take that out for the trailer. And then I succumbed to it. And I was like, you're right. It is. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I realized in doing so, kind of like we've already crossed this line into being like, hey, this is rebellious. This is punk rock. We already were doing all of this stuff when we shouldn't have been doing it. And we were documenting people out
Right.
doing
I will tell you
know,
that I
underground
was
comedy or whatever. So it's hard to keep it really soft. You know, it's hard to
right.
keep it non-political when it's already political in a political environment. Like I was like try to avoid as much as I humanly could any of like the medical aspects or like showing lines of people waiting to get COVID tests or like whatever. Like I try to avoid 3/4 like 99% of that stuff and 99% of that talk in this thing to just try to focus on the core of what it was to be a comedian in a pandemic. So it was a challenge. I would say it was honestly
I'm sure.
it was
Because I will
wild.
say I did notice that now, and I was very pleasantly surprised that there was no election talk. Thank God. There was no there was no real there was no overt politicizing or saying that the pandemic was a hoax or anything like that.
No.
But oddly enough, and by the way,
But I also didn't have a nurse on there going, oh, you know, these people are out here doing this stuff and they're all idiots and da 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 da. So it's both ways, right? Like I
Right.
wasn't like, yeah, buck the system, everything's fake.
Right.
And I also wasn't like, here's a nurse saying that everybody on this, you know, program is gonna die or whatever. So it's
but I was surprised with the 120 comics. It wasn't really that dirty. There were maybe 5 instances of profanity in the film altogether. Was that intentional?
I'll say again.
I said there was only like five curse words in the whole movie. It wasn't that dirty.
Nobody really got dirty. It's just how it happened. When we asked the questions, people just started talking and gave their answers, and nobody was trying to be edgy. No one was trying to be jokey. People were just cooperative and wanted to tell their point of view when we asked them the questions. It was a very friendly.
Wendy Wilkins talks about suck a dick. That's about it, you know. And,
that's right,
which she always does.
Yeah, I think there's a few of them in there. Just like, you know, some whatever, a little bit of sex talk. There's Kasim talking about being a kid and having the lady seeing his kid dick or whatever when he's doing his little dance for the funeral or whatever. Like there's some pieces to it that are still kind of fun and edgy and weird, but yeah, overall it was like we just, you know, we did.
You think that's people's headspaces because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fun documentary that kind of puts you in a place where, you know, it we'll probably have to rename it something like, hey, if you're a 12-year-old living in the Midwest, here's a manual to how to become a comic in a pandemic. Because that's kind of what it feels. It feels like we just kind of like wrote like a how-to. You know, you got your beginning, middle, and your end. Here's how to stay sane. Here's how to get into it. Here's what happens when a pandemic hits. You know, so it's just kind of like that, and then just kind of whittling it all down and really making it. Once we realized we didn't have a narrative, and this is actually probably pretty key. Once we realized we didn't have a narrative, and that we just had a bunch of interviews of these questions and kind of got people's opinions. I realized that we had I had to create basically an amalgamation of voices. So I had to have one conversation with 120 comics and kind of turn that into one solid conversation over the course of an hour.
That I think you really did. And for the 12-year-old who'll be doing comedy in the future, unfortunately, Fry's went out of business, so we'll have to figure something else out. But
that's
James,
it, man.
What I liked about it, and I saw it last night. We had a test screening. A couple people walked in front of my car, but other than that, it was fine. But like you're just standing there, like walking with you. What am I gonna say?
Yeah, like 50 things on my plate. I'm like, I can't be. I was happy.
I was happy
to play.
I didn't really like. I knew 90% of the comics, so I knew whose voice it was. So it wasn't a big thing. Yeah. But James, what I like about it, I think what's going to appeal to non-comic fans such as Nicole and other people is you really get, and you and I hear these conversations all the time, but and this is kind of what I like to do when I have comedians on my podcast, but you really get to hear comedians being themselves, being real people without the shtick, without the persona, and just really talk about real stuff.
That's very interesting.
Was that an intention, or that just the way it turned out?
Yes, definitely.
It was them talking about themselves, right? I mean, it's really about them talking about themselves in a pandemic. So yeah, it was very heartfelt. You know, there's some pieces to it where they're really getting in. I mean, we got into what it is that makes a comic tick. I mean, you're talking about the addiction of comedy and
Right. Like they have to do this. It's not, it's a very primal need for them.
yeah, and there's something that's, you get that feeling with this film, and you realize that it's not just like, hey, we're a bunch of jerks that went out and we wanted to do what we please. It's like, oh God, no, theirs is actually therapy, and this is actually a way for people's to balance their mental stability, and mental, well-being. So there's something really intrinsic about it, where you realize that comedy is a it's a gift, it's a voice, and it's also a healing message for, I mean, from comic to comic, they're like telling each other jokes, and it's sticking, and it's healing, and it's pieces about life, and it's hard times, and there's something just magic about that. So I think trying to capture that element and trying to capture that piece of that was really what it was. What at the end of it, I feel like we got a really good little kernel of that, that piece. So
well, it's an element of show business that isn't explored, which is the underneath the people that you see all the time on TV, underneath all the comics that you see all the time, there's this other wave of comedy bubbling up, and some will make it and some won't. But James, did I read right that there was a comic that you filmed that you credited but did not make the documentary?
I don't know.
Because that's on the IMDb page, that there was one comic that was filmed and was credited but was not actually in the documentary.
That sounds right.
Who was that?
Let me see. Well, yeah, because I'm looking at the IMDb page right now. A police helicopter did circle comedians at the Fry's Electronic parking lot. Mike, I can attest to that. And I think that happened every time, because it's by the airport, so I think there's a lot of helicopter activity out there.
Oh yeah, there were a few comics that didn't make it, I'll be honest. Whether it was sound or some of them. I mean, one of them was kind of half in the bag. So we were like, your footage, you can watch your footage, but you're not gonna like it, kind of stuff.
Well, here's what it says on IMDb. Sam J doesn't appear at all, although he does appear at the credits. The crew thought it was funny.
It's great. It's great. He helped. He was one of the producers, so he helped facilitate a lot of the interviews and such. And it was like, he was like, yeah, let's get the interview, and then it just became January was over. That 2020 was over, and I was like, that's our cutoff. I was like, we're done doing interviews. I got it, because they kept coming, and I was like, no, we're cutting it. 2020, that's the doc. So we didn't get an interview with him, but he ended up producing. But yeah, I was like, whatever, I'll keep your name on the thing as one of the people, and you're just not in it. So he showed up last night to the screening or whatever, which is kind of telling of just what a tight crew it is anyway. So
we can confirm the crew does find it funny.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a.
Look, you guys are laughing. Look at that.
That's a good indicator. Yeah.
Poor Sam J. Sorry, Sam. They're laughing, not me. Nicole's not laughing either. James.
You're like, yeah, whatever.
I was just thinking how awesome it is that you actually filmed all this, and how important it is, because it's a piece of history.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think we did a really bang up job. I mean, it was a lot. It was a group effort, and once we got out of LA, it was basically a lot in San Diego, because that was James and I did LA and San Diego combined, so we probably hit like 50 comics between the two cities. I'd say probably 35 here and 15 down there. Does that sound, give or take? Right. And then I did probably another 35 in San Francisco, and then probably another 20 up in Eureka. So it's just, I don't know. It's, by the end of it, it's really just about documenting. It's a love letter to California in underground comedy form, really, at the end of the day. And it's a slice of life, and it's not a narrative. It really is more of like an intrinsic, it's an amalgamous conversation with one comic, but it's like 120 comics just kind of blended together like this,
Right.
Like
They do and they don't. I mean, they all have their own interesting perspective, and and they're all different ethnicities, different ages, different races. But
how did you feel about that really quick though? That was because that's always one of my concerns was like I'm like I can't keep filming all these white male comics. Did you feel like it was a good blend? And I know that's
well, considering I'm a white male comic and I was in it for about 30 seconds, maybe I feel a little short-changed. But no, I think I saw what you did, and and that's what's great about comedy. And this is what I love about comedy, is that I get to meet and befriend people I would never meet or befriend.
Yeah.
From all, from every race, every ethnicity, every age. I mean, I would probably run across James Dean at some point, but I get to meet other, people that I would never have met, people from the, just from the largest mansions to people that are, in the toughest ghettos and
living in their cars and doing open mics. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's always economic. It's never, right. I think LA is a really good denominator of that, but it's not racial here. It's always been economic. So you just glom into whoever's in about the same cash circle as you. And then, once in a while you guys get to go to some fun party that's, way above your pay grade. And,
I try to tell
for me.
I had a conversation with a relative of mine. I'm not going to say who it is, but they were like, why do I see a couple of relatives have come up to me and said, why is it I always see like mixed couples on commercials, or it's always black people on this, or it's always gay people on this? And the reason is we've had white male stories from white male perspective for years, and now we're being allowed to get other people's perspective. And if you watch it with an open mind, you see it's a different perspective, but we're all the same. It's the same story.
How did you feel about the blend? How do you feel about the levels of like BIPOC v female v male? Did you feel like it was equally like represented, or did you feel like it was?
I think it was pretty. I think it was pretty. He's getting my critique, Nicole. He's going to re-edit the movie. No, I think.
Listen, I'm like I have all of these things always running.
Well, you could probably edit a whole nother movie.
All of these thoughts.
Whole other 90 minutes.
James had some rando come up and go, I like this movie, but I got a better way for you to cut it. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. You know what? I saw your act up on stage, but I got a better way for you to cut it. So
Well, I appreciate your faith in me. No, I think it was very.
I'll take it. I'm like, I love opinions.
No, I think it was very.
Critiques, so
it was very even-handed without being obvious, without being okay. Here's white, black, male, female. It wasn't like that. It was organic. It flowed, and I think it really flowed. And I think everybody was represented. I actually think there were more African American comics towards the end than in the beginning. I did notice that, but they were represented throughout. Like I say, it seemed organic. It didn't seem like okay, we're gonna have this, and this, or this, and this. It was all organic, and it was. I did notice at a few points, just going along with the flow, and having 5 different people give their version of the same point, and they were all different nationalities and different genders.
Yes, we're not the new Disney Star Wars.
Well, that's good. Oh yes,
blink,
yes.
Blink,
but
blink.
one thing I will say, I did not see. I will say this, and I don't know if it's just they weren't out or you didn't catch what they were doing. Probably LGBTQ, IA, keep going on with the letters. I didn't obviously see too many represented. I know there's a couple.
That's true. I think the gays
there's a few LGBT comics. It's just they didn't make it a point to like say it in their interview as making a statement of who they are.
They weren't trans. They weren't swishy. They weren't obvious. And I don't.
Yeah, right. They weren't trying to make it a statement that they were. They were just a part of they were a part of the community, and even in their act, they might make jokes about being gay here and there, but they don't That's not their act. Like they don't
Yeah.
come out as I am the gay comedian.
Right.
It's
As
just
opposed to the time,
a
yeah.
part of who they are.
Right.
Yeah.
As opposed to the time I sucked James' dick and he cut it out of the movie. But let me ask you,
Because
James.
you guys weren't doing it to be gay. You guys were just doing it for
Right, we were
fun.
doing it as
It
straight
was
men.
for
Yeah.
a political statement.
It was a
It
political
wasn't
statement. Yeah, exactly.
It was a very, it
bro.
was a very, very thick political statement, I
Yeah.
must say. But James, I will say, watching the movie, what came across to me, with all due respect to Carol, who puts on all these open mics here in California, did then, does now, the people in San Francisco, the people that put on other mics, is the American Comedy Club, or I'm getting the name wrong, but the
American Comedy Co.
Yes,
Company,
American Comedy
company.
Co. in San Diego
Yeah.
really comes out as the hero on this, in that they were a legitimate comedy club that started doing comedy out in the street.
I'll tell you what, Los Angeles was a very frustrating city. You would go down to San Diego, and the general feel of the comedy community in San Diego was, he said it in the documentary, they had no traces back to the club for COVID. They were following all the guidelines, and there were new rules that just kept popping up that felt like they were specifically barring comedy. As restaurants started to open up, it felt like comedy was still being barred.
Right.
And it just didn't make sense. And the clubs here in LA were actually afraid of the authority, where it was when you went down to San Diego and you went to ACC, they were writing well thought out statements to protest the restrictions so that they could still have comedy within the guidelines, because they were following the guidelines, and they, through the system, fought the system the right way to do it, and we're still allowed to do comedy out on the sidewalk. And it was a battle. The battle continued after the documentary. The mic got re-shut down. Then they were allowed to have book shows, so it became book shows only on the sidewalk. And then there was a new restriction, and then they went against that restriction and won. And then so all these restrictions kept getting thrown at them, and they kept disputing them and winning, and kept coming back. And you didn't see that in Los Angeles. I think the only club that opened up their patio to be similar to American Comedy Co. was the Improv. And I think they opened up around early March of 2021. And they started having open mics on their patio that were within the restrictions. And the thing is, nobody came at them to try to shut them down. And you didn't see any of the other comedy clubs trying to do this simply out of fear. And it was frustrating to see that, hey, this is working and no one's trying to shut down the Hollywood Improv because they're following the guidelines. So obviously we're allowed to have comedy outside on these patios, but yet all the other comedy clubs in LA were too afraid to open up their patios to try to do comedy.
Well, I will say Comedy Store did try it.
Yeah.
They tried once, but the Improv opened up.
Through the window.
But they shut down and they didn't reopen up. The Improv reopened up.
Right.
The Comedy Store stayed shut down until things officially reopened across.
What was the other one? The Mint. Is that
the Mint opened up. It shut down.
For like a month or two.
It was on the sidewalk for a while, and then it reopened on the back patio.
Yep.
And then
El Cid, which is where we did Mark. That's where we did.
That was that was open in the beginning, and then they got shut down in July, and then they stayed shut down. I think they're back open now. So that things are back.
They're open now, and trust me, they were. So I was talking to them about doing a show, and it fell through. But boy, they really wanted to keep the comedy going, and they just
they couldn't.
It just goes to show you that no matter what you do, and no matter what the government tells you to do, comedy will survive, and comedy will resist. So James, Angelus, we could talk all day, but let me ask you: you saw the movie with a crowd of comics for the first time last night. What did you think? And what was the reaction that you got?
I was very happy. I was very pleased at the reaction. Everyone really loved it. There was a lot of really positive feedback. There were some edit cuts we had so that when comedians did make jokes, those jokes would hit. Every one of those jokes hit. The humor came through, which makes the documentary fun to watch because you're watching this serious situation unfold through the documentary. And of course, comedians are going to have a humorous perspective. So having those little laugh breaks to break the tension really helped the film flow. And every time I hear everyone pop with laughter, it just made me happy. I was like, oh, it was such a good feeling.
Fun.
Such a good feeling.
It was like doing a set yourself.
Yes, it was.
When we both watched it probably 70 times, and I watched it with a couple of little mini focus groups, you know, aka my friends, like close friends or whatever, and they're laughing at the parts that are kind of funny or whatever. And they came out to the show last night, and they were laughing and loving on the times when the crowd was laughing at the parts that were funny. So it was like a double layered, like I was like, these are really hitting. This is great. It's hitting for the normies. It's hitting for my friends because it's hitting for the normies. Like, I'm in. I love it. I think like,
it was hitting for the comics too. I could tell you from experience.
Yeah, like it's fun. Some fun parts. I mean, still serious talk, but yeah, I think James hit that on the head. It's just, you know, fun, serious talk, but still some fun stuff. You know, some really fun comedy and overall lighthearted. Even though it's, you know, it's a kind of a, you know, it really rides this funny fence of being like a serious doc about not so serious stuff, but the people are still real people, so they're serious. But then it's like, are they kind of making jokes? So then that's not serious. I think it does a fun job of being really whimsical and kind of finding that, you know, that frivolity or that, like, you know, that.
And Angelus, you got to experience our world, kind of.
Definitely.
You got to create something that got laughs, and you got to hear the laughs in real time.
Yeah, and I gotta like live with you guys. I felt like I was Jane Goodall with a bunch of apes. I got to come down, and I just wouldn't make eye contact with people, and I would just film them, and it worked out really well. Like I think I learned the value and kind of like the heart of a comic in general. Like and it's totally creeper stalker shit. I know it because I'm like, this is like what I told James when I was like, oh, it's, you know, it's a 5-minute conversation that we had a year ago. Like you and I, Mark, we did that interview. It was a 5-minute interview last July.
Right.
And that was it for you. Like we've maybe chimed in back and forth a little bit. Like I feel like we've posted some stuff or whatever. I'm like liking on some stuff that you're doing or however it goes. But that's basically it. For you. On my end, I've been like looking at your face close and like editing and whittling the heads and the tails of your little bit about Fry's Electronics.
Right.
You know, for 5 months, and I moved it over here, and now it's over here, and I kind of like this and the heads and tails and da 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 da. Like I've heard your 5-minute conversation for the last 5 months, like rattled around in my head, and like have whittled the best piece of it, and have like just honed that in. So it's totally stalker stuff where I'm like, I know you, like I know all about you, like, oh my god, we're best friends, you know. And it's like I have to kind of take that into consideration. I'm like, no, I'm like a weird ex that had like where you like left a voicemail, and now I'm just like pining over this voicemail for like 6 months. Like, I wonder if he still likes me. I'm like, hey, I made this movie about you. I hope you still like me. And I did it for like 120 comics. So I'm like, hi, 120 comics that don't, you know, it's like that I haven't been very impactful in your life. I'm like, I hope you guys missed me because I've been thinking about you guys for 6 months. Like, it's all of that. It's a lot. It's been a lot. So I'm happy that it's happening. I'm happy that we're getting it out. I'm happy we're doing test screenings, and I'm happy that I was able to be a part of, you know, your guys' world, because it's a zoo, and it was a zoo when it was a pandemic, and it was really a tight crew. So really fun to run with and to meet everybody and to be, you know, to just get that insight, you know, and to be an anthropologist, to really be the Jane Goodall of the comedy scene in California for a pandemic. I'm like, I'm set. I'm good. I can go, you know, search for trilobites in the desert now or whatever. So it's great. I love it.
So Nicole, if we've learned anything, even the most depressing things are best watched through the prism of comedians, because we will make the best of it. And I have a new stalker, so that's great. James, tell everybody the upcoming screenings and what you have going on. And thank you both for being on the show. I hope everybody watches Pundemic. It'll be rolling out, and hopefully I could see there's so many streaming services. I could see somebody picking this up and being a very big hit. So Hulu and HBO Max and Amazon Prime and Netflix and everybody, if you're listening to this podcast, pick up this documentary. People will dig it. It's really going to be you just throw it on, people are going to find it and people are going to love it.
Yeah.
James, or we'll go with Angelus. Angelus, tell everybody how to get a hold of you, and tell us everybody the upcoming screenings of Pundemic.
Screenings are going to be July 20th at the American Comedy Company down in San Diego. That's going to be a July 20th. That's a 10 p.m. show with Jim Pine, Chris Espinoza, possibly Briggs, but we haven't confirmed yet. And then obviously Nathan Donovan, who's there.
I might make you drive down for that.
You should. It's gonna be they're hosting it out. They're really super stoked.
Right.
James really made that connection with the owner and the programmer and the producers and stuff.
I got family and friends down there, so I might just check that out.
Beautiful. July 24th is going to be in Eureka at Savage Henry, and that's going to be with Lauren Brenner, Josh Barnes, and Chris Durant. Who's the owner of Savage Henry, and as well as the owner of the magazine, the Savage Henry magazine. So they're going to be helping us host that one for a midnight show. I can't remember. It's not Nate Craig. I can't remember who's doing the night before, but we're catching like directly after that. So it'll already be a packed house. Should be a lot of fun. And then obviously all the local comics and producers and promoters will be out to watch the film. And then the 27th at Milk Bar in San Francisco is a show. It's going to be with Ivy Cordova and not Brooke Heineken, Ivy Cordova, and Sereni. Weira Sakira. Sereni Weira Sakira. She's the Indian girl that's talking about Tiffany Haddish with the plants and such.
Oh yeah.
So she's great. And then Ivy Cordova is the one talking about taking care of her Asian parents or whatever that are stuck over here. She's got the kid and stuff. Real fast talker. She's great. Those two are going to host it out with Andrew Holmgren at the Milk Bar on the 27th. And then, honestly, I think we might do one more showing. The more I think about it, I kind of want to do another showing, and I'll say it out loud now. So I think we should maybe do one more in LA. And I'm honestly thinking possibly Renegades, James, just to put it up there, put that on the books. But those are the ones that are locked in now, and those are the ones that are set. So it should be pretty fun. It's gonna be a goofy summer. Just driving around and showing this film to a bunch of comedians that are in it, and yeah, catching some.
And follow Angelus on Facebook. He loves it.
Whatever. Give me on the Instagram, ATBMM, if you want to follow me or say hi, or you want to drop me a note or tell me how great the film is or how bad it is. And thank you guys. Thanks for having us on the show. I think this is really awesome. I just love it.
No, I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Yeah,
James, tell everybody any upcoming shows you got. And you can't find you on Facebook, but you are on Instagram.
I am on Instagram at JamesDemon333. Upcoming shows, I do have a few. I just can't think of them off the top of my head right now.
But if you go to the Instagram page, you'll be posting all the shows you have upcoming.
Yeah, I can't. Well, hold on. I'm going to go to my notes. You might disappear for a second.
You've already disappeared, but
yes.
Okay.
Really?
Down the abyss.
Oh, God.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I'm looking for shows.
Laptop.
Where's my upcoming shows? Here we go. So,
it's like
okay, so
solitaire. It's like
this one that I'll promote. I have a showcase coming up in July, a therapeutic noise showcase at Fourth Wall Cafe in Hollywood. That's produced by Joe Bando, and then I might. This is in talks right now. I might be on a showcase in San Diego at American Comedy Co. the day after our screening of Pundemic. That's in talks right now. It hasn't been confirmed, but that's in talks right now. I've been contacted by the booker. So that hasn't been confirmed, but I'm hoping that does happen. So that way I'll be done.
Definitely have to go to San Diego.
Yeah.
I didn't know Fourth Wall Hollywood was open again. That's a great news. I'll let them know. I'll try to get on some shows there. And we might be doing a show in August. We'll talk about that. But James Demon 333 for all of your demonic comedy hijinks.
Yes.
And Nicole, how
And
do
low
people get a hold of
jinx.
you? I'm sorry. Go ahead, James.
I said, and low jinx.
And by the way, it took all of the show to say this, but Zoom sucks. I hate fucking Zoom. I say it every show. Actually, our next show we're going to try out a studio, so we'll see what happens. But
Yes, please.
Back
Yes.
in the studio.
Yes.
Zoom is the devil, but don't anybody who works for Zoom that handles my subscription don't ignore what I just said. Nicole, how do people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Instagram, Nicole6Books. And you can find me on Facebook, Nicole H6. And you can find me on renegaderadio.com.
Yes, you can.
There.
And but one last question before I give my plugs to both of you, because you do talk about Zoom shows in the documentary. Did you ever think of putting some footage of Zoom shows in the documentary so people can see how lame those shows really were?
No. I mean, they're painful to watch anyways. So it's like we don't want to make the documentary painful to watch.
Okay. And I'm Goth Comedian on all social media, and I'm trying to take a picture of the podcast right now.
Yeah,
Everybody.
Oh, you want to smile?
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. I got the can. All right. If everybody wants to pose, we'll do that.
Yeah.
Spring break.
Everybody have a wonderfully creepy week. Follow me on Goth Comedian on all social media, Renegade Radio, everywhere you listen to us. Everybody have a wonderfully creepy week, and look out for screenings of Pundemic. You're going to like it. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.